History whispers. Today's world, it pulses. And the All Sorts podcast on YouTube, well, that's your compass, to understand it all. We've got a whole library of explorations waiting for you, each one a deep dive into fascinating realms. Like, share, subscribe to the All Sorts podcast right here on YouTube. Don't let those sparks of insight fade away. And for a daily dose, of thought-provoking glimpses and behind-the-scenes whispers, follow the All Sorts podcast on X, Instagram, and Threads. Join the community, minds eager to explore all sorts of things.
Welcome to this deep dive, a journey into the life and political odyssey of Ho Chi Minh.
A huge figure, wouldn't you say? Especially in the 20th century for Vietnam, of course. He was the driving force behind the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, its first president, first prime minister.
More than titles, though, right? He was at the heart of Vietnam's struggle for independence, a long and ultimately a successful one.
Exactly. So, for this deep dive, what have we got?
You brought biographical accounts, historical context, lots from encyclopedic entries. We're looking at the key moments, the influences that shaped this remarkable life.
Absolutely. So beginnings, right? Born Yun Sinh Kung, May 19th, 1890, French Indochina, Ngon province. It's interesting, though, because throughout his life, he used different birth years, 1891, 1892, even 1894 and 1895. Why would that be?
That's curious. Back then, in that part of the world, record keeping wasn't always, so precise. But it also suggests something about identity. Maybe how fluid it could be for people like Ho Chi Minh during those times of huge social and political upheaval.
Do you think he's different dates strategically?
Could be. Evading authorities, maybe aligning with different phases of his revolutionary journey. It's possible. And his family background, that's essential too. His father, Nguyen Sinh Suk, a Confucian scholar, a teacher, steeped in traditional Chinese philosophy, the social order that really shaped Vietnamese society. He became an imperial magistrate, but was demoted later. Nationalist views, refusal to fully cooperate with the French. So this resistance, it deeply influenced young Thanh, that's Ho's later name, exposed him early on to that anti-colonial sentiment.
Powerful inheritance. What about his education, though? Formal schooling?
Churhan, classical Chinese writing. Colloquial Vietnamese, too, and he attended the college Quoc Hoc in Ho. It's striking that this institution shaped other future leaders. Pham Van Nong, Von Nguyen Giap, even Mun Ngoyen Diem, who would become his adversary later on in the South.
Wow, so this one college, a crucible, shaping Vietnamese leadership.
It seems so, for better or for worse.
And he started as Nguyen Sinh Kung. When did that change?
When he was 10. Confucian tradition, he was given a new name, Nguyen Tu Thanh. And even then, you see glimpses, of a spirit that would take him across the world. He loved flying kites, fishing, simple pleasures, perhaps hints of curiosity and engagement with the world, even with colonial constraints all around.
And then, beyond Vietnam's borders, in 1911, he starts working as a kitchen helper on a French merchant steamer, Amiral de la Touche-Treville, it was called, taking on the alias Van Ba. This job, it opens up the world. Marseille, Le Havre, Dunkirk. This is the start, really, of his extensive experiences abroad.
Foundational experiences, for sure, broadening his horizons. Imagine a young man from a colonized nation right in the heart of the colonizing power and beyond. He sees different cultures, global trade, most importantly, maybe the vulnerabilities of the colonial system, the contradictions.
Oppression goes from abstract concept to tangible reality.
Exactly. It's all around him.
And he doesn't stop at working on ships.
No, he applies to the French colonial school, probably hoping to gain skills, use them for his people.
Makes sense.
But he's not admitted. Doesn't deter him, though. He keeps traveling, 1911 to 1917, deeper and deeper understanding of the world.
And the U.S. There's evidence he was in the United States, maybe New York City, Harlem, even Boston between 1912 and 1913. He claimed to have worked as a baker at the Parker House Hotel.
In Boston, yeah.
Records haven't confirmed it, but there was a letter from that time, postmarked New York City. It puts him there. So what do you make of this U.S. period? What's its significance?
It's potentially huge, even if the details are a bit hazy. There are suggestions, some historians say they're speculative, but he might have met Korean nationalists there, resisting Japanese rule, they were. And he claimed to be influenced by Marcus Garvey, attended meetings of the Universal Negro Improvement Association.
That's the movement for Black empowerment, Pan-Africanism, right?
Yes. So imagine he's exposed to these early anti-colonial movements, racial justice movements. It's all shaping his political consciousness.
Providing models for resistance.
Exactly.
Then Britain. He lived in London, it seems. West Ealing, Crouch End, and Hornsey. Between 1913 and 1919, worked in hotels, chef, dishwasher at the Drayton Court Hotel.
Right. And there are claims about him training as a pastry chef under Escoffier, the famous Escoffier, at the Carlton Hotel.
Oh, wow.
But the evidence for that is thin. We do know, though, he was a pastry chef on the New Haven-Dieppe ferry route in 1913. So lots of varied experiences in the West during those years.
It's fascinating. This young Vietnamese man traveling the globe working, it all leads to his political awakening.
Yeah.
France, 1919 to 1923. Marcel Cachin, the French socialist, influences him greatly.
He arrives in Paris June 1919, a pivotal moment. He connects with other Vietnamese patriots, Phan Chau Trinh, Phan Von Trang. They form a group the Patriots Annamites.
The group of Vietnamese patriots.
Yes, and he starts using the name Nguyen Ai Quoc, Nguyen the Patriot, a name, well, it becomes synonymous with the Vietnamese independence movement.
This group, they petitioned the Western powers at the Versailles peace talks. They wanted to advocate for Vietnamese rights and French colonial rule. But they were ignored by the very powers who were supposedly all about self-determination. What impact did that have?
It was a huge disillusionment. They appealed, on the principles of self-determination, the thing the Allies were proclaiming after World War I. But nothing. This rejection, it solidified something for Nguyen Ai Quoc. He saw that real independence wouldn't come from appealing to the colonial powers. It had to be a more radical path, revolutionary. This was the turning point, the push towards revolutionary ideologies, socialism, communism. You know what's fascinating? By this time, by Versailles, he's already committed to socialism. He's not seeking reforms within the system. He wants transformation. He's urging French socialists to join Lenin's Communist International.
Wow, so he's not just a nationalist. His convictions are becoming distinctly socialist. There's a story about the death of the Irish Republican Terence McSwiney in 1920. That really affected him, didn't it?
It did. That event resonated deeply, highlighting the sacrifices people made for liberation. And it solidified his own commitment. Then, December 1920, a pivotal moment. He becomes a founding member of the French Communist Party. At the Congress of Tours, he votes to join the Third International, the Comintern.
A clear declaration of his ideology.
Yes, and then he joins the Colonial Committee of the party. He wants to raise awareness about conditions in the colonies, Indochina especially.
Did he succeed?
It's hard to say. He worked hard, but it seems the French Communist Party, their focus remained mostly on domestic issues. But it was a learning experience. He saw the dynamics between the imperial center and the colonized periphery. And in Paris, his personal life develops too. A relationship with Marie Brière, a dressmaker. And recently, French police archives from 2018, they revealed he was connected to members of the Korean Provisional Government, Kim Kyu-sik, Jo So-ang. It shows his broader network, his commitment to solidarity with other movements.
So Paris was intellectually, politically formative. But then Moscow, 1923. Why Moscow?
The Communist University of the Toilers of the East. It was an institution, for training communist revolutionaries from all over the colonized world. He studied, he networked, and he witnessed Lenin's funeral in January 1924. That must have left a mark.
A powerful moment.
And his involvement deepens. June 1924, the 5th Comintern Congress. November that year, he's in Canton, China, now Guangzhou.
What's he doing there?
Working for the Comintern, interpreting for Mikhail Borodin, a Soviet advisor to Sun Yat-sen's Kuomintang, the Chinese Nationalist Party. It's a time of revolutionary ferment in China. But he's not just translating, he's organizing. He establishes the Association of Vietnamese Youth in Canton, opens a training school specifically for Vietnamese revolutionaries.
So he's putting theory into practice, training the next generation.
Exactly. And between 25 and 26, he organizes youth education classes. He even lectures at the Whampoa Military Academy.
The prestigious military academy, crucial in the Chinese Revolution.
These students, they become the core of the communist movement back in Vietnam. He's shaping their ideology, building connections. And personally, he marries Zheng Zuoming, also known as Tam Thuy Minh, October 1926.
Oh, wow. So amidst the revolution, he's starting a family.
It seems so. There's a story, when his comrades objected, he said he needed a wife to learn the local language, manage his household.
Practical consideration.
Indeed. But this period in China, it's also when the controversy arises. The alleged betrayal of Fan Buchao in 1925.
A complex issue. What's the truth of it?
Well, it's debated, definitely. Hang Vanshi, an anti-communist writer, accused Nguyen Ai Quoc of betraying Fan Buchao, a leader of a rival nationalist movement, to French agents in Shanghai. Said he did it for a reward.
For money.
Some accounts say he needed funds for his organization, but William Duker, in his research, he rejects this, says there's no credible evidence, inconsistencies in the accusations. Others say Nguyen Thuy Huynh was responsible for Phan Boi Chau's capture. And Phan Boi Chau himself, even though he was arrested, sentenced to house arrest, he never denounced Nguyen Ai Quoc.
It shows how messy things can get, these revolutionary movements, accusations flying around as political weapons.
Absolutely.
After China, he goes to Thailand. Late 1920s, in a village called Nha Chak, then through India, ends up in Shanghai. What was he doing during this time?
Organizing, strategizing, building connections within the communist movement, laying the groundwork for uniting the Vietnamese communist factions, and then Hong Kong, early 1930. A landmark moment. He chairs a meeting that brings all the different Vietnamese communist parties together. The Communist Party of Vietnam is born.
Wow.
And he's key in forming the Indochinese Communist Party, the ICP. It aimed to unite revolutionary movements across all of French Indochina.
But Hong Kong, that's where he runs into trouble, right?
June 1931. He's arrested. The Hong Kong police, working with the French authorities in Indochina, they want him back.
To face trial.
Extradition to French Indochina, imprisonment, maybe execution. It's a real threat. But he's lucky. He gets Frank Lusby, a British solicitor, to defend him.
And Lusby
argues skillfully against the extradition. It's a long legal battle, goes all the way to the Privy Council in London. And to help, his allies spread rumors of his death in 1932.
Oh, wow.
In the end, the British, they see him as undesirable, order his deportation from Hong Kong, but they say he can't be sent to any French territory. So he's released, escorted to Shantou in China, and eventually back to the Soviet Union.
A close call. Back in the Soviet Union, he studies and teaches at the Lenin Institute in Moscow, further solidifying his ideology. Then, 1938, back to China. What brings him back?
The world is changing. Japanese expansionism in Asia, a growing threat. He becomes an advisor to the Chinese communists, uses his understanding of both Vietnamese and international affairs. He becomes the senior Comintern agent for Asia, coordinating communist activity, stationed with the 8th Route Army in Guilin. In 1939, he even serves under Marshal Yu Jianyin.
A major figure in the Chinese Communist military.
Yes, it's valuable experience, guerrilla warfare, military organization.
And then 1940, France falls to Germany. This is a huge opportunity for Vietnam, right?
It is. France, the colonial power, is weakened. Ho and his allies, Vuong Ngoan Giap, Pham Son Doong, they see the chance. And in October 1940, they establish the League for Vietnamese Independence, the Viet Minh, Guilin, China. A unified push for independence.
In 1941, he returns to Vietnam after decades in exile to lead the Viet Minh against the Japanese, against the French.
A momentous return. The Indochinese Communist Party, they form a united front specifically to oppose the Japanese who have moved in and to challenge the French administration. Their guerrilla force grows, 10,000 strong, the men in black. They fight the Japanese, the Vichy French. And during World War II, get this, the Viet Minh get support from the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, the OSS.
The precursor to the CIA.
Helping them fight the Japanese.
Strange bedfellows.
War makes for strange alliances.
He also faces trouble in China, though.
Mm.
Briefly jailed by Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists.
Yes. His communist affiliations, they made her suspicious, but he's rescued by Chinese communists. And it's around this time, 1943, that he starts using the name Ho Chi Minh regularly.
Ho Chi Minh.
A powerful name, bright spirit, clear will. Some say it was a tribute to General Ho Chi Minh, the Chinese general who helped secure his release.
As World War II ends, April 1945, he meets with Archimedes Patty, an OSS agent. What happens?
A crucial meeting. Ho Chi Minh offers intelligence on the Japanese in exchange for communication, potential support for independence. The OSS, they see the value. They send a team to train Viet Minh forces, and Ho Chi Minh gets treatment for malaria from an OSS doctor.
Collaboration, even if it's short-lived.
It shows the complexity of alliances.
August 1945, the August Revolution. The Viet Minh against the monarchy, which was under Japanese control.
A swift uprising, mostly bloodless. The Japanese surrender, a vacuum. The Viet Minh takes control. Ho Chi Minh becomes chairman of the provisional government, essentially the premier. September 2nd, 1945, he issues the Proclamation of Independence in Hanoi, modeled after the American Declaration of Independence.
A bold statement.
He convinces Emperor Badai to abdicate, and he appeals to President Truman for recognition, support. He cites the Atlantic Charter, self-determination.
What was the U.S. response?
Nothing. Silence. The Cold War was starting. The focus was on Europe.
And in 1946, he's in Paris, negotiating with the French, unsuccessfully. He meets David Ben-Gurion.
Yes. Ho Chi Minh, he knows about the Jewish people's search for a homeland after the Holocaust, offers them a home in exile in Vietnam.
Real.
An incredible gesture. But Ben-Gurion, he's focused on Palestine. He declines.
Back in Vietnam, the new government consolidates power. And it doesn't seem like they were very tolerant of opposition.
They were firm. To consolidate control, they took action against non-communist nationalists. Thousands imprisoned, some exiled, rival parties suppressed. They wanted Viet Minh dominance. However, the first National Assembly, it did include non-Viet Minh members, at least initially.
And the Chinese nationalist troops arrive in Hanoi. He makes a compromise with their commander, General Lu Han. What was it?
He didn't want conflict. The Chinese were there to oversee the Japanese surrender north of the 16th parallel. So Ho Chi Minh agreed to dissolve the Communist Party temporarily, promised elections for a coalition government, including non-communists, a tactical move to preserve their independence.
To avoid a fight with the Chinese.
Exactly.
The negotiations with France, difficult, unsuccessful. March 1946, an agreement. Vietnam is a free state, but within the Indo-Chinese Federation and the French Union. A fragile peace.
Very fragile. It falls apart quickly. The two sides, they had different ideas about autonomy, about Vietnam's future. The French, they wanted to keep their influence. The Viet Minh, they wanted full independence. And for both, it seems, the agreement was partly about getting Chiang Kai-shek's army out of the north. They both saw it as an obstacle.
So the Chinese leave, and the fighting starts.
Yes, in the north.
And there's this troubling event, the Viet Minh collaborating with the French against other Vietnamese nationalists.
In 45 and 46, it happened. They wanted to consolidate their own power. So they worked with the French to suppress other nationalist groups, Trotskyists too, mostly in the south. It shows the ruthlessness of the power struggles within the independence movement. Daniel Gurnham, the French socialist, he recounted a conversation with Ho Chi Minh in Paris. Regretted the death of To Thu Thao, the Trotskyist leader, but he said that those who didn't follow his line would be broken.
A chilling statement. Negotiations fail. The French escalate military actions. Ho Chi Minh declares war against the French Union December 1946. The First Indochina War begins.
The Vietnam National Army, they attack the French in Hanoi. Poorly equipped, but using guerrilla tactics, even rudimentary weapons. There's a story from the early days. Ho Chi Minh decides to try for a truce. The French negotiators arrive, expecting something grand, and they find him in a mud hut. But inside, there's a silver ice bucket with champagne.
A show of confidence.
Perhaps, or maybe irony. The talks fail, though, apparently, over the issue of Japanese officers who were helping the Vietnamese. Ho refused to hand them over to the French.
Interesting. Then, 1950, a turning point. The Battle of Route Colonial 4, a Viet Minh victory. Ho Chi Minh goes to Moscow, meets Stalin and Mao. What happens in these meetings?
The Soviet Union recognizes his government as legitimate. And critically, China agrees to become the main supporter of the Viet Minh, providing material, training. It's a huge escalation. There's a famous quote from the beginning of the war. Ho Chi Minh told a French visitor, "You can kill 10 of my men for every one I kill of yours. But even at those odds, you will lose and I will win."
And he was right. 1954, the Battle ofIen Bien Pho, a stunning Viet Minh victory. The French are defeated. The Geneva Accords follow.
The Accords end the war, but they also divide Vietnam. Temporarily, they said, at the 17th parallel. A communist north, a non-communist south.
The Democratic Republic of Vietnam, with Ho Chi Minh as its leader, sets up in Hanoi. North Vietnam, a one-party communist state.
Between 1953 and 1956, they implement land reforms, rent reduction, land redistribution, but there's violence, executions of so-called landlords, reactionaries. Initial estimates were exaggerated, but declassified documents suggest over 13,500 executions. A brutal period.
In 1956, they admit to errors in the land reform. Ho Chi Minh himself apologizes.
It was a correction of errors campaign.
A sign of self-reflection, but after a lot of damage.
Yes. And as early as 1956, discussions begin in the North about reunification, by force if necessary. By 1959, Ho Chi Minh is pushing for support for the Viet Cong in the South.
The communist insurgents.
And in January 1959, the People's War is approved, ratified by the Politburo in March, a major step towards escalation.
And it wasn't just Vietnam. They effectively invade Laos in July 1959.
Supported by the Pathet Lao. They start building supply routes through Laos and Cambodia to support the Viet Cong, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, a vital artery for the war. And they create the National Liberation Front of South Vietnam, the Viet Cong, in December 1960, trying to make it look like a broad front, not just communists.
To counter accusations they were violating the Geneva Accords.
Exactly. By the end of 1959, it was clear the reunification elections weren't going to happen. Dick in the South was cracking down. Ho Chi Minh starts preparing Le Duc to succeed him as party leader.
So he was stepping back.
Some analysts thought so at the time, but he remained head of state, a key member of the Politburo, very influential.
There were divisions within the North Vietnamese leadership, weren't there?
Yes, in the early 60s, some prioritized economic development in the North. North First, they were called. Others wanted immediate action in the South. South First, guerrilla warfare to reunify. By 1963, there were something like 40,000 communist soldiers in the South infiltrated from the North,
showing their commitment to the South First approach. But in that same year, 1963, there were talks of peace between Ho Chi Minh and Diem.
It's intriguing. It was during the Manelli Affair, a French diplomatic initiative. Michissier Manelli, the Polish commissioner to the International Control Commission, he reported that Ho Chi Minh was quite interested in the idea of a neutral federation. He saw an opportunity, especially with the tensions between Diem and the Kennedy administration.
So he was playing both sides.
Perhaps. He reportedly said the main obstacle was the U.S., something like, "Our real enemies are the Americans, get rid of them, and we can cope with Diem and New afterward." He also reportedly recognized the importance of the Ho Chi Minh Trail for all of Indochina, and he told Gobertun, the Indian chief commissioner, to shake hands with him Diem for me, suggesting a willingness for peace, but on his terms.
Then Diem is overthrown and killed, November 1963.
And the North Vietnamese Politburo, the South First faction in ascendance, decides to go for it, overthrow the Saigon regime.
No more peace talks.
It seems not. Robert McNamara, the U.S. Defense Secretary, famously said there was no organized government worthy of the name in South Vietnam at that point. It was an opportunity for the North.
And then, 1965, everything changes. American combat troops arrive. Operation Rolling Thunder begins. The bombing campaign.
A massive escalation. Ho Chi Minh travels secretly to Beijing, April 1965, meets Mao Zedong. They agree that China will provide support troops, logistical help, but Mao doesn't want to commit combat troops unless the U.S. invades the North directly.
A gamble for both sides.
It caused debate in the North Vietnamese Politburo. They didn't fully trust China. Ho Chi Minh had to use all his authority to get them to agree.
And the bombing, it was relentless.
It was. The North Vietnamese people, they were mobilized. Men, women maintaining infrastructure, repairing damage, working constantly under threat. Ho Chi Minh insisted that there would be no peace talks until the bombing stopped completely. He saw it as a violation of their sovereignty. Negotiating under those conditions, it was unacceptable.
1967, a new strategy emerges. General Nguyen Chi Thanh, the commander in the South, proposes a major offensive, the Tet Offensive. What was Ho Chi Minh's role in this?
Le Duc supported it, but Von Nguyen Giap, the defense minister, he opposed it. He preferred the guerrilla war. But it seems Ho Chi Minh ultimately approved it. He wanted reunification in his lifetime, his health was declining, and maybe he thought a bold move could shock the Americans, force them to withdraw.
January 1968, the Tet Offensive. A massive operation, huge casualties for the Viet Cong.
It was a military setback, but it had a huge psychological impact, especially in the U.S. People saw that the war was not going well. The bombing of the North was halted. Peace talks began in Paris.
And Hanoi shifted its approach after Tet, right?
Towards a longer war, a war of attrition, wearing down the Americans. Ho Chi Minh remained central to this strategy.
But he wasn't just a political and military leader. He was a writer, a journalist, a poet, and he spoke multiple languages.
He did. French, Russian, English, Cantonese, Mandarin, Vietnamese, even Esperanto, it said.
His poetry is famous. Before independence, he wrote in Chahan, classical Chinese, poems from the prison diary written while he was imprisoned in China. It's considered a classic in Vietnam. After independence, he wrote more in modern Vietnamese, short poems published in Nam Dan for the Lunar New Year.
He also founded newspapers. Le Paria in Paris in the 1920s, it had an international reach. Thanh Nien, Youth, which mobilized young Vietnamese.
As president, he lived simply. A stilt house on the grounds of the presidential palace.
Yeah.
What was his personal life like during those years?
Publicly, it was very modest, all about the revolution. Reading, gardening, visiting schools and children's homes. Uncle Ho, The image was carefully cultivated. His personal relationships, they're mostly unconfirmed. The official narrative emphasizes his dedication to the nation. Some historians say he married a Chinese midwife, Zheng Suming, in the 20s. Others say he had a relationship with Mungun Thiem Minh Kai, a fellow revolutionary, in the 30s. But this part of his life, it's not really talked about officially.
In his last years, his health was poor, diabetes, other issues, but he was still committed to a unified, independent Vietnam.
Absolutely. He wanted all foreign troops out of the South. He believed the Vietnamese would ultimately win.
September 2nd, 1969, Ho Chi Minh dies. Heart failure. In Hanoi. He was 79. They didn't announce his death until the next day.
September 2nd was Vietnam's Independence Day, a significant date. There was a week of national mourning. His funeral was huge, hundreds of thousands of people, international delegations. He wanted to be cremated, but they embalmed him. He's in the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum in Hanoi.
A lasting symbol.
When the North Vietnamese won in 1975, there was a song, Bác Văn Con Chung Chao Hang Quan, meaning Uncle Ho is still marching with us.
Uncle Ho, Bác Ho. His legacy is immense, especially in Vietnam. His image is everywhere, a symbol of unity, the struggle for independence.
Some compare his leadership to Confucianism, the hierarchy, the paternal guidance, the pursuit of a just society. There's even a folk religion that identifies him with the Jade Emperor.
Wow.
It shows how much he's revered.
But there have been controversies, too. Attempts to control his image, the details of his life. And the question remains, was he primarily a nationalist or a communist?
A complex question, probably both, in a way.
He's remembered in other countries, too, where he lived in exile. And there were songs written about him, about the Vietnamese Revolution, by international artists, activists. He inspired a lot of people around the world.
He did.
Ho Chi Minh's life, it's an incredible story. The early travels, his evolving political beliefs, the struggle for independence, the war, truly remarkable.
So it leads to a question. How intertwined were his nationalist aspirations and his communist ideology? Did he want a free Vietnam or a communist Vietnam? Or both? How did these forces shape his decisions, the fate of Vietnam? And looking back at his life, what does it tell us about anti-colonial movements, about national identity in a complex world?
Lots to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life and political journey of Ho Chi Minh.
And remember, the All Sorts podcast on YouTube, it's full of deep dives like this one. Explore our library, subscribe so you don't miss a new journey. Follow the All Sorts podcast on X, Instagram, and Threads for daily insights. Keep exploring with the All Sorts podcast.